America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I need a motion to approve the agenda. Are there any additions or changes?
There are some additions, sorry. We have, let's go, all right. First one item to cross out underneath the
Action.
consent agenda. Item number 10, 2 under the auditor treasurer, the second one, higher area in Heron. We're going to cross that line out.
Number 2 under number
Yes.
2.
Yep.
Okay.
Roman numeral 2, number 2.
Roman
Yes.
number 2, number 2, yes.
Okay.
And then under the action items, I have handed you an additional copy. We have 3 items to add for finance to close some things out for this year and address. So,
Was there a handout on those 3 items?
yes, should have it right in front of you. It looks.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So,
This one.
all righty.
so the addition of those 3 items.
All the pages to try and read about 3 seconds.
So I need a motion to approve it with those additions.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed. Approve the minutes from November 26th and December 3rd board meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion?
That's
All-
with the correction that you sent out? Yeah.
Yes. That's with that, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. And we're gonna start out on a real pleasant note this morning, honoring our,
Oh, public comment.
oh, is there any public comment? I forgot.
See no public.
Okay, no public comment
They're all
this morning.
public.
They're all public comment this morning. So we're gonna start out on a very pleasant note this morning with our presentation of our recognition awards.
All right, well, join me up front and we'll take care of these.
Sounds good. First, I got them all separated nicely. Maybe I'll go around the other way.
Everybody's here today, but we'll start down here if you'd like.
Okay, this 40-year award to Cindy Aguilar.
How many?
40.
You guys can come on down.
I have a question. How did you get out of school to start?
Hey, I was making $4.12 when I started, so, yeah. And a 40-year for Carrie. Carrie O'Hare. Oh, thanks, Carrie.
Slow on.
Right. Oh, thank
You're
you.
gonna have to redo that.
Here, just
You're
like
too fast. Oh, what am I doing? I'm sitting
Good.
back.
Wonderful. 35 years for Carol Lapham.
Thank you.
Three that are 30 years, Thomas Peter. Not here, okay. Tammy Moss. And Liza. Years, Mark Olson.
You guys are just moving through here too fast. I should, yeah. Well, this is it.
Sheriff was slowing down.
Yeah.
For Diane Schultz.
15 years for Jonathan Koulis. Deborah Hartley, 15 years. That was a good year. Lori Feldman. Lori Feldman.
And the young one.
And the youngest of the group, 10 years, Tess Kruger.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
My first.
Congratulations to all of you. Thank you.
Can I get all of you to come up for a photo real quick?
Commissioner Stu? We can just sit here. We can stay here in our chair.
Come on up front real quick.
They probably don't want to take a picture. They're all left already.
They're back at work.
One picture's enough, they say.
Group photo.
I think I have every color now on that.
Cindy, I didn't. Congratulations, that's true. We could just.
We're in.
Yeah. We're not gonna miss this one.
Teresa, I think you should get up front there with her.
Oh, it's for the group.
Okay.
Okay, sure.
I've only had 9 years. I'm not ready for the 10.
Cindy, how far, Cindy? How far along is the courthouse when you started? Pretty well built. Thank you.
You know what I would have done? I actually,
Stand up just in case.
I was being respectful to our.
I started for Bill Donovan, so we weren't even.
Thank you.
I was,
What was
he
Bill?
was a part-time. They were working in the jail because I was down in the basement. when we started.
We went to school together.
We
She
Really?
left early, decided to take a job.
You do?
Crazy.
That's a fire hazard, you
Yeah.
know?
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's pretty neat.
Moving on.
All right.
All right, next on the agenda is Marissa
40-year anniversary
Yeah.
anymore.
Streifel.
Not off.
That's correct, yeah. Okay. Is this on? Does this need to be on?
It's
Yeah,
on.
you could get
It is.
You might want to pull it closer
Closer?
to you. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Is that good?
That's good.
Okay,
You might.
great. Okay, so I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about the proposed gypsy moth treatments in Houston County for 2020. So we'll start with a little bit of the history of the gypsy moth and why it's a problem, and then go through our proposed management strategies. And just so you, this is just for information. This is not a voting measure or anything like that. So the gypsy moth is it's an invasive forest pest, and it was introduced in the late 1800s into Massachusetts, and since that time it's been spreading its way to the west and to the south, and so in Minnesota it's located along the eastern third of our state. It has one generation per year, and the important thing of this slide is that the egg mass is the overwintering life stage, and it's on the landscape for the longest amount of time. The larva is around for a shorter amount of time, but this is the damaging life stage. So the males and the females are sexually dimorphic. That means they look different, and the females can't fly, so they release a pheromone to attract the males to them. And so we can use this in our monitoring. But first, let's talk about the egg masses. So they like to lay their egg masses in protected areas, and it doesn't need to be natural habitat. It can be anything. So on the bottom center is like on the eave near a basement. On the top right corner, you can see it's on a pot, and on the bottom of some lawn furniture. And so they like to lay them in protected areas. It can be anything. And so this is the life stage that is most likely to be moved by the humans because they're in hidden areas and they're on the landscape for the longest. Now, when the caterpillars come along, they're polyphagous, so they can eat a lot of different trees, up to 300 different species. And now this is the life stage that is damaging and also can pose human health impacts. So when they're in outbreak populations, then they produce a lot of frass, which is their poop. And so that can be a nuisance. It can also decrease property value, and it can ultimately lead to quarantines. And so how do we keep track of these populations throughout the state? Well, annually we set out these monitoring traps, and so they're stapled to the trees, and the string in the picture on the right, that's impregnated with the pheromone, and so it tracks the male moths to these traps. And then we monitor throughout the eastern third of the state, trying to see if there's any elevated trap catches, and then when we find elevated catches, then we go out and we do an alternate life stage survey to see, is this just males flying in, or is there actually a reproducing population? So given the 2019 monitoring results, this informs our proposed treatments for 2020. And so you guys aren't the only ones. There's also a proposed treatment in Oak Center and also in the metropolitan area in the Nokomis neighborhood. So here in Hoka, we are proposing to manage the gypsy moth through aerial application of BT, and this is through the funded through the Slow the Spread project. And so this is the national management project for managing the gypsy moth. So it's federally funded, and because it's federally funded, there is a site-specific environmental assessment that is taken. That is done, and then also any comments from the public will be incorporated into that environmental assessment. And so the proposed treatment area is just outside the town of Hoka. And we're proposing to treat it with BTK, and that's a biological insecticide. So that's biological Bacillus thuringiensis variety Kerstachii. So it's order specific. So it's very specific to moths and butterflies. And it only kills the actively feeding caterpillars. And the BT, it's naturally occurring in soil, so it breaks down really rapidly in UV light. And because of this is why we need to do 2 aerial applications spaced about 7 to 10 days apart. And it's organically certified, and it's commonly used by gardeners as well. And so this, the project has it in our folder here. I have the map of the state monitoring, the proposed treatment areas, and then these 2 maps this is the map that shows like the cover type, and then this one has like the roads on it. It's just outside the town of Hoka. And then the last page on the last envelope is the OMRI certificate saying that this is a certified organic product.
How many acres is that?
It is 1921. Yeah, and there will be some exclusions of the farm areas, but the 1921 is the whole polygon acre here, the square. Okay, so since this is an aerial application, we have very strict weather considerations for when it's going to be applied. So it's hard to give a definite date and time now because it depends on the insect development. So it really depends on what our spring is going to be like, but we'll send lots of updates as the time comes. So it begins at sunrise, and there's going to be low-flying aircraft. So we really focus heavily on the public notification, and so then on the right side of the pamphlet here, I have some samples. So this is the bulletin that is mailed to the residents. It's mailed to all of the residents within the proposed treatment area. And this gives an outline of what the gypsy moth is, the proposed treatment product, and then it invites the residents to join us at a public open house. So most of the time, this answers most of the people's questions. But we always keep this open house, so then if there's any concerned citizens, they can come and have their answers, their questions answered directly. We also have a website that's going to be updated with these proposed treatments. We like to come and talk to the county first before we update our website, so that you hear it from us first rather than someone else seeing it. And so we update our website regularly. We also have an email listserv and a text message update. So we really focus really heavily on this public outreach and notification. So this is going to go out. The public open house is we like to try to do at the beginning of February, and so this goes out in January, but then the treatments aren't applied until May, and so there's a big gap here of between when the public is notified and when the proposed treatment actually happens. So we fill that gap by sending out these reminder postcards. And so there are two different styles. We kind of tailor it to the community where we're treating. So in more metropolitan areas, we focus on the insect, and then in these rural areas, we'll more likely put a picture of the aircraft so people will know what to expect on the treatment day. And so we send these out about 7 to 10 days before the proposed treatment to kind of remind people that, hey, in the next week or two, you might be seeing a low-flying aircraft at around sunrise. We put a legal notice in the paper, and we also have a list of local leaders that we inform before the proposed treatment, and so that includes hospitals, law enforcement, 911, dispatch. We do a media blitz. We have press releases, and we do Facebook, and if you guys have any sort of outreach system that you guys use, we like to work together to get the word out that way. And then again, we have the text and email notifications, so as it comes closer, people can sign up for these at the public open house, and then as it comes closer, then they have these reminders coming. And then finally, we have a Rested Pest hotline, so if for the less technology savvy people, they can call up the hotline, and that's updated regularly with our proposed treatments. And on the actual treatment day, we have someone manning that line, so if they have any questions, they can talk to someone immediately in the office. And so, yeah, that's what I'm here to talk about, let you know that this is going to happen in the upcoming spring, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Have you been in touch with the townships?
I have not. We go to the county if it's a township as the local government unit. But yeah, I can reach out to the townships. This one has
one, Hoka Township.
Hoka.
Hoka Township, I think they meet the third Wednesday.
Mm-hmm. I think this one has 2 townships in it,
It might
Hoka and Mound Prairie. Does that sound
Mount
right?
Prairie might be in on that.
Yeah, I think it splits half the
Splits,
block.
yep.
Yeah, so I can reach out to them.
It'd be a good idea to reach out to them so
Okay.
they know what's going on.
Okay, yeah, different townships have different varying levels of participation,
Yeah.
so we find
They
coming
just
to the
like a
county is
heads up
best.
so they know what, if people call them, they know what it's all about.
Sure, sure, definitely.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, the ash borer, or what, that's ash trees.
Correct.
Gypsy moth, any tree?
Any tree, yeah, it can eat over 300 species of trees. And so while the defoliation won't kill the tree directly, and the tree can re-sprout its leaves, but that takes up a lot of reserves, and so that leaves it susceptible to secondary agents of mortality, like other insects, native insects, or pathogens. But multiple years of defoliation can lead to tree mortality. Mm-hmm.
Is this a treatment they did on the East Coast and where the majority of them are?
Yeah, so the way that the Slow the Spread program works is that it focuses along the expanding population front because the gypsy moth moves short distances naturally, but then it's this human movement that makes these long distance isolated populations. So we try to slow the spread by monitoring along that expanding population front and then finding these isolated populations and treating them before they can coalesce and then make the jump a lot further. This is like it's here, it's reproducing. We found egg masses, and so that's what's triggering the BTK treatment. But the goal is eradication in this treatment.
So, has the East Coast, has there been success or?
Yeah, so it has had success in slowing the rate of spread. It's been here since the late 1800s, and so once an area becomes generally infested, then the kind of the management strategies change. So when we're outside, ahead of the expanding population front, our goals are eradication, find the isolated populations and eradicate those. Then in this transition area where it's kind of in between, they do more of like suppression treatments, and so the goal is maybe just to get the populations down. And then where it's been established for a long time, then they would do treatments only outbreak populations.
So birds don't eat them, or there's nothing that?
No. So that's a great question. So the BTK, it's order specific, so it'll only affect Lepidoptera.
But I mean, before you,
A natural way of getting rid
yeah,
of them.
before you even treat, do they have a natural
Oh.
enemies of sorts?
Yeah, there are a few generalist predators, but nothing that really affects the population significantly. The egg masses can have 500 to 1,000 eggs in them, and so just one introduced egg mass can establish a population. And birds don't tend to like them, to eat them, because look how hairy they are. And so even though it's maybe an easy food to get, it's not the most desirable. Anecdotally, some colleagues from out east have said that if the birds do try to eat the gypsy moth, they'll actually like get a caterpillar and then like bang it to like try to get those hairs off before it eats it. So yeah, not the most palatable. But yeah, the non-target impacts are very, very limited. So the product that we're using is will only affect moths and butterflies. And the time that we're applying it, so we'll apply it right when the leaves, this is a defoliator, so it likes the new fresh leaves. And so we'll apply it right as the leaves are expanding, and then that's how it'll get on the leaves, the caterpillars will eat the leaves, and then the bacteria disrupts the gut lining, and so they can't absorb those nutrients, and so they basically starve to death. Now, it breaks down really rapidly, and so the more beneficial insects, like the pollinators, they come out later in the season, and by the time they're out foraging on the nectar and pollen of the flowers, this product is already degraded by the UV light. Yeah.
I assume you don't want to have a rain event after?
No, we watch the weather. We have very strict weather restrictions, so of the temperature, the relative humidity, the wind speed, the amount of time before treatment when there was precipitation, and the amount of time after treatment that there was precipitation. So yeah, all of those, that all plays into why the timing is difficult and why it's hard for us to give, it's going to happen on this day at this time.
No, you're
so
looking for a good window.
yeah, we're looking for a good window, and so that's really why we stress people getting on the email listserv and the text message updates, because if they're concerned and they want to know, that's the best way for them to get the information. Yeah.
So, how is Hoka picked? I mean, you showed us the little traps that you put out. Your department goes out and puts those traps around, and then what's the criteria for deciding?
Yeah, so on this map, everywhere there's a little gray dot, that's everywhere where we placed a trap, and then the colored dots are where we found moths. So whenever so you can see we have like a red dot down here, and so whenever we have a high trap catch, then we'll go out and survey the area and do what we call an alternate life stage survey. And so we go out and we look around, and here we found egg masses, and so that's what triggered the BT, like the site selection and the treatment product.
And then you follow up.
Yeah, and then we'll follow up next year. Post-treatment, we'll have a delimit grid on it, so we'll place traps there around the proposed treatment area at a higher density, and so then we'll be able to compare 2019 we caught insects, and then 2020 in the summer we'll see if we catch any more insects, and then the goal is to catch none, and that would indicate that our treatment was successful.
So by putting this treatment in the Hoka area, that'll hopefully eliminate the gypsy moth, but it's gonna eliminate all the other moths and butterflies as well? Like the monarchs and whatnot?
No, not all. The non-target impacts would be for other defoliators at the time, and so it's even. There are scientific studies showing that these gypsy moth treatments can actually increase the geometric diversity in the area, and so there are potential non-target impacts, but they're really minimized by the active period of the proposed product, so it breaks down completely within 7 days. And then also the phenology, the timing of the application. So only these defoliators are out early in the season when the leaves are small and fresh and easy to eat. And then later in the season, the beneficial insects like the pollinators, they're looking for the flowers and the nectar and the pollen, and so they come out later in the season.
I guess I was driving more at like monarch butterflies and whatnot, so it does affect them or it does not affect the monarch?
Due to the phenology, the time when they're on the landscape, there's minimal non-target impacts because of the phenology. They're just not around at the same time. Now, if you had the product and you treated, yes, if you fed the product to the monarch butterfly, it would kill them because it's a lepidopteran. But because it's out so much later in the season, there's not really non-target. It won't affect them because of our treatments because we're doing it so much earlier.
So do these gypsy moths, they only breed in the spring then?
In the summertime, yeah.
All summer long or just early
They're
summer?
only out for like
summer.
they're only out for like a week. So then they mate, and then the females lay their eggs, and then the eggs are out from October until May, and then the eggs hatch, and then that's when we're trying to time our treatment. Right when the eggs hatch, right when the caterpillars
But
are
it's
tiny.
just one time a year that they have the hatch?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, one generation per year. Yep. Yep.
You are very knowledgeable.
Thanks.
You put the traps out with your own people, or do you have traps available for people to put out?
We have trappers that we put out, but we also have all these ones out in
Western.
Greater Minnesota. They don't like to call it outstate. Greater Minnesota. This is what I learned because they're still in the state. They want to be,
Yeah.
Greater Minnesota. So you can see we have like these little patches here. So those are we can provide traps to like county ag inspectors or we collaborate. Extension, county ag inspectors, any Native American tribes that may want to cooperate. So if there are people interested in putting out more traps, this area is pretty well covered with our trapping trappers that we hire seasonally. Yeah.
Very good.
Great.
Thank
to
you,
know.
very
Thank you.
interesting.
Yeah, and so if we'll just continue to work together and schedule the public open house. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, since the 1890s,
Yeah.
do you know where they invaded from initially, or?
Yeah, it was like so in the late 1800s, people had a lot of different professions, and so this guy was like just kind of a jack of all trades. His name was Etienne Leopold Trouvelot, and so he was like an astronomer, and he was a entomologist, and he was a artist, and a whole bunch of different things. So he brought them over from Europe and had a little lab in his backyard, and then they escaped. And yeah,
Wow.
and so since that time they've been expanding their range. Yeah. So I have some more of these folders if there's anyone in the public that might want some. Yeah, I'll give you one. And then
Craig probably wants a trap, too.
yeah, so that's it. So if you guys have any questions, then
Very interesting.
feel free to ask them, and I'm at your service.
Thank you, Marissa.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you.
Thank you very much. And the only thing we ask is that you let the two townships know.
Yes, I will.
That's all.
Yes, I will be in contact with them.
Yeah, she's
and-
working with Aaron in his office to set up the township.
Sounds
all that
good.
stuff.
Wonderful.
Excellent.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Appointment, Chris Nicholson, Municipal Advisor from Eilers Bonding. No? Yep.
Carol, you're welcome to.
Different person this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bruce was unable to make it today, so.
Oh, we're
Chris
so
is here.
used to Bruce, yeah.
Yep, yep. Yes. Yep.
Just our new one, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Again, my name is Chris Mickelson with Ehlers and Associates. Myself and my colleague, Bruce Kimmel, work with the county. I was actually here a couple of years ago for a advanced refunding back in late 2017. We got in just in time before the IRS no longer allowed advanced refunding. And so I'm happy to be back here again. The pre-sale report that was included in your board packet and is now in hard copy in front of you is for a proposed $3,160,000 general obligation refunding bond issue labeled Series 2020A. And so this would be to current refund the county's outstanding GO jail bonds. That was the Series 2009C, and general obligation CIP bonds, Series 2010A, strictly for an interest cost savings. And so the structure would not change from what's already outstanding with those two bond issues. This would basically just take those out strictly to save on the interest expense with the lower projected interest rates. You can see in the authority section that there's a few different statutory authorities being used here. That's because of the jail bond piece and then also the CIP piece. So that 373, that applies to the CIP piece. 475, that's the county's general bonding authority that state statute allows for. And then 641, that's specific to the jail bond component here of this issue. This issue does count against the county's overall limit on net debt, the 3% net debt limit, although because this is just replacing what's already outstanding, no additional debt is being added to that debt limit, and the county has over $57 million in remaining capacity even after this issue counts towards that. So still ample capacity there. You can see here that the interest rates on the obligations proposed to be refunded are between 3.25% and 3.5%. And as of right now, this refunding is estimated to save just over $82,000 over the next 5 years. So that net present value benefit, $79,820, and that's equal to 2.59% of the refunded principal. And then like what we did 2 years ago, that was an advanced refunding. This is a little bit different. This is a current refunding, so that means that the obligations that we're proposing to refund the 2009A bonds and the 2009C bonds, the 2010A bonds, they're callable either now or within the next 90 days. And so it's a much simpler process where no refunding escrow is being established to defease bonds. Instead, what happens is the bond proceeds are received, they're held on to until the call dates are, come to be, and then the proceeds just take out the bonds rather than, funding an escrow, having to wait until, a year from now or 2 years from now when they can be applied to ultimately take out the bonds being refunded. Because this issue is only 5 years in term, we recommend that no call date would be given on this. You could do a 3 or 4 year call, but given that there's really not much difference between 4 years and 5 years, it's possible and probably even likely that certain underwriters won't be interested in bidding on something that has a call date at year 3 or at year 4. And so wanting to keep this open to as large of a market as possible and not wanting to see any sort of interest rate penalty and really wanting to maximize savings, we think it'd be in the county's best interest to just sell this non-callable. If this was something that was 10 years in length or 15 years in length, then certainly a call date at, say, year 7 on a 10-year issue or at year 12 on a 15-year issue would be warranted. But given the short term, a call date probably is not something that, is not something that we would recommend here. This issue is bank qualified. That just means that the county is issuing under 10 million in tax exempt debt in the calendar year. BQ status leads to really that general obligation, tax exempt, BQ. That means it's the lowest possible borrowing cost for the county, which leads to the most possible savings for the county for this refunding. And then, given that it's well in excess of $1 million, we would recommend pursuing a rating on this issue. Below that $1 million threshold, the economics don't really work out, but anything above that, really the rating fee is warranted, is justified given the interest cost savings that are realized by having a rating. A couple of years ago, the county went through a rating process with S&P, and they affirmed the existing AA stable rating. And so with that strong of a credit rating, it really is in the county's best interest to keep that up and go through the process again. The basis for recommendation, this is in line with the county's past debt issuance method. General obligation bond sale really is what opens us up to the widest possible market of bidders, the lowest possible borrowing cost, the most cost-efficient means to achieve this type of refunding. And also that competitive sale approach, that's best practices from GFOA by making the nationwide bond market compete for the purchase of the county's bonds. That really is how you know that on that sale date that you are basically achieving the lowest possible borrowing cost here. And then I'll skip through the next few sections here. There, if you have any questions on whether it be continuing disclosure, arbitrage, or the service providers the county has worked with in the past, I'm happy to address those. But you can see here the summary section. Really the key points here would be to either accept or modify the finance assumptions included in this report. And then the final attachment here is what we call the set sale resolution. And so by adopting that set sale resolution, that gives us our marching orders to go back, create the offering document, the preliminary official statement, which is distributed to the bond market so that those various underwriters can make their purchasing decisions here. Following that is the proposed debt issuance schedule. So you can see on today's date, December 17th, that's the pre-sale review by the board. The due diligence call, this is a new step here for 2019 that we feel is an important thing to be doing. The Securities and Exchange Commission has really upped its scrutiny of primary offering documents. And so in an attempt to make sure that the material that we're offering to the market is accurate and complete, we've worked through a questionnaire that we'll go through with Carol and her staff just to make sure that information is both accurate and complete. We anticipate that'll take place here the week of December 30th, which is when we would hope to distribute that offering document. And then we've scheduled the conference call with Standard & Poor's. We can obviously always cancel, but at this point we've preliminarily scheduled that for January 3rd actually. And then the sale would take place at noon on January 13th, and I would come back, or Bruce would come back on January 14th at 10 a.m. to present those sale results for your either award, or you always have the option to reject if the bids received don't yield any savings to the county. Then obviously it would be in your interest to reject all bids. The date that the closing would occur, that's the date the county would receive proceeds, would be February 5th is the estimated date at this point. And then the redemption date, the date that 2009C and 2010A bonds would be taken out, would be here February 17th, 2020. And then the attachments, the first is the estimated sources and uses of funds. You can see on this, there's the 2009C column, the 2010A column, and then under sources, as of right now, just the par amount of the bonds. It's likely that a premium bid will be seen here, and given that proceeds are just being used to refund outstanding obligations, we would use any premium realized to just reduce the bond size here. And then uses of funds, underwriter's discount, that's whichever underwriter ultimately wins this sale we're allowing up to 0.8% for them to compensate themselves for making the market in this transaction. And then cost of issuance, that would be our advisory fee, Standard & Poor's rating fee, and Dorsey's bond attorney fee. The deposit to the current refunding fund is the amount needed to take out those two outstanding obligations, and then the rounding amount is just a function of municipal bonds being sold in $5,000 blocks. So you round to the nearest 5,000, and that's what allows that to happen. The next page is the estimated debt service schedule. So you can see this matures February 1st, 2025, and so we're not shortening, we're not extending what's already outstanding. This, strictly is being done to refund for an interest cost savings, what's already out there. The first two maturities are a little larger, a fair amount larger than the final three maturities, and that's a result of the 2010A bonds only having two remaining maturities, and then the 2009C bonds have each of those 5 maturities. As of right now, we're projecting with current market rates a 1.56% interest rate, and I will say that no promises being made. In the last month or so, the sale results that have actually been achieved have been significantly better than even what we've projected with current market rates. Now, obviously, things can change in the next month, but that's the market dynamic that I've seen anyway in the last month or two, is just the sheer demand for what's being offered can't keep up, or the supply of what's being offered can't really keep up with the demand for underwriters for tax-exempt general obligation debt here, especially for state of Minnesota, credits here in the state of Minnesota. And then the next page is the debt service comparison. This is the refunding savings analysis, which shows, if you look in that far right column, the future value savings projected right now at $82,154 in the next 5 years. Net present value benefit, you can see in those the little numbers in the middle of that or so, 79,819, and then net present value benefit relative to the refunded principal at 2.587%. And then the last attachment is that set sale resolution that I mentioned a minute ago. So again, this would tell us to go back to the office, prepare that preliminary official statement, work with Carol to do that due diligence call, to do that rating call with Standard & Poor's, and then ultimately offer this document out to the market, receive the bids on January 13th, and then we would come back on January 14th. So with that being said, any questions that you may have, happy to answer.
Would you go through that again, please?
One more time from the top.
Yeah. I'm just curious, is this 34,000 cost of issue? It costs 34 to save 80? Is that what I'm?
So that's right. The savings would be after all fees, net of fees. But that is correct. That admittedly, there are occasionally refunding opportunities that are in the 8, 9, even 10% ballpark, very significant savings. It's a good thing and a bad thing that when and more so a good thing, that when the county issued the 09C bonds and the 2010A bonds, that they priced really well with low interest rates, so that when you look to take them out now, there's just, on a percent basis, there's just not a ton of savings there. That being said, 82,000 plus is still a significant amount on a cash amount,
Right.
Relative to just that cash. Again, if the market were to turn against the county between now and a month from now, and we sell these bonds and there's just really no savings, maybe there's 20,000 in savings, then on January 14th, you have that option to reject all bids.
It, yeah.
And in fact, we would recommend that you reject all bids. You not incur any of the cost of issuance, and you walk away from this thing like you never did it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But that's, with these types of refundings, admittedly, to pay S&P, 12 grand to have them go through a rating, to pay the bond attorney about that same amount, and to pay us a little bit more. It's something that can be a little frustrating, but at the same time, that's the cost of doing it, and 82,000 is better than nothing. And also, I will say that with only 5 maturities, as each year passes, the opportunity to refinance for savings diminishes, because you're now comparing it against fewer and fewer years. And so, as you can see, like in that first year, you're seeing an estimated 20,000 in savings. Well, if you pay at what's currently outstanding at that rate, and that opportunity goes away, and now you're into next year, now you're only seeing a potential of 60 or so thousand in savings. And so that's why, we would recommend that to do it now is better than to wait, and is better than to not do it at all. But yeah, admittedly, it's not a huge,
Right.
percentage of savings.
I'm sure they'd all waive their fee.
Pardon?
I don't think that's gonna happen.
If there's
Waive their fee.
if there's an award, we don't, none of the participants waive their fee. If there's no award, then all participants waive their fee.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
No, I understand. Refinance costs whenever you refinance.
Now, Jack said 34,000. Is it 34 or 44?
Yeah, I think
So if we approve this, the 44 comes out of our pocket up front?
no,
This comes over the,
Part of the,
no. There's only the 44,000 in issuance costs to the 3 participants, and then also that allotted 25,000 in underwriter's discount. That's only paid if there's a closing, and there's only a closing if on the 14th of January you like what you see, you accept the sale result, then you award to the winning bidder. But
So
on that day,
but we don't write a check.
exactly,
It all is
on that day,
done.
if you reject all bids, then you don't pay anyone anything.
so the payment to your firm is over the 5-year period?
No, it would be, following the closing, it would be in lump sum with proceeds of the sale. So the bonds are sized large enough
Okay.
so that the issuance costs.
So we borrowed the money and pay you out of the borrowed money.
That's correct.
Now, how does this, just show me, how does this stand up to the current amortization schedule? Which page shows me that? What we're currently paying over the next 5 years versus what we're gonna be paying?
Yeah, that's found in the debt service comparison. So it's kind of collapsed, but if you look at that column, old net debt service, that's the annual payment amount that the county's making
Okay.
on the combined 09C and 2010A bonds.
So the new one is what we're paying on the 2 versus the old.
So the new would be.
$1,026,000 versus $1,046,000.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, now I understand.
At this time, we're just looking for a resolution to have them move forward. We don't make the final decision till January 14th, correct?
That's correct. When we come back with sale results, that's when a formal award decision would need to be made.
Now, there was something in here talking about December 30th.
Yeah, that would be the dates for or the estimated dates anyway, for the due diligence call and the distribution of the official statement.
We don't have to have a meeting until January, or do we have to make a decision?
Nope, so the set sale resolution that's included as an attachment to this would authorize us to distribute the official statement.
It saves us $82,000 over 5 years. It's
I
kind
think
of
it's worth pursuing.
It's a no-brainer, kind of.
Yep.
Right. And like I said, today, we're just doing the resolution for them to move forward on it. And the 14th, we'll see what the results are.
I make a motion that we approve the resolution.
Could be numbered 19-51.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
It's actually action item number 4 on our list when we come to it. So.
Okay, sounds good.
We're going with 4.
All right.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll clean that up and get you a copy of it, Chris, once it's signed.
Okay. Okay, moving forward on the consent agenda. Do you want to go through them individually, or do you want to do, we got it all in our packet, but,
Are there any that you wish to pull off and address separately?
I did have a question with regard to number 6.
Okay.
On the tobacco licenses, there's River Valley Convenience Store, Houston, Houston Food Mart, BP Houston, and the Dollar General in Houston. These cigarette licenses, tobacco licenses, the BP and Dollar General are in the city of Houston. How come we're doing licenses in the city?
Houston doesn't individually. That's why
So we do
they
that.
default to the county for zoning.
And is one of these
They're-
Money
they're
Creek
tr-
Haven? Money Creek Haven?
There have traditionally been 4. One decided not to submit, so I think that
Yeah, it's probably
is the
Money
one that
Creek
Money
then.
Creek is.
Okay.
So,
All right.
yeah, I'm sorry. Larissa's been talking to him, I guess.
Money Creek Haven is no longer gonna, they've chosen no longer to sell cigarettes.
Okay.
okay, good.
Now, I believe I read this morning that this federal legislation that is anticipated to be passed soon will move everything to 21.
Wow.
So,
For selling, or for
Yeah.
buying?
for buying.
Selling,
Yeah, so,
for,
Could
not
be.
use.
Yeah.
That answers my question, so I'd be all right with just approving the consent agenda,
The
Is that a
consent
motion?
agenda, do you have any
Just-
questions on,
if anybody else.
I think we can make I would ask that we have a motion to approve 1 to 9, and then we'll do number 10, which is the personnel from separately, if that's,
is Rob here, Frankfurt?
in case he wants to say.
I'll make that a motion that we approve the consent agenda items 1 through 9.
I'll second that.
Further discussion, Jack just brought out, did Robert want to address anything on that grant while you're here? Okay.
Okay.
Sounds
I would mention while you're here, at the AMC meeting, I stopped at the state setup that they had, and you got a very nice compliment. So,
You're doing a good job.
yeah.
I think we all heard that too. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Now, number 10 is are there any questions on number 10 on these positions which have come from our Human Resource and Administrator Office?
This is the Beverly
This is a-
Bauer that we
Yeah.
all know.
And she just can't get enough of
Yeah,
us.
that's, you can't.
The auditor treasurer positions are, the 67 days are specifically to augment the election cycle coming up in 2020. And so the second one withdrew her name, and I think at the first meeting next year, we'll have a second name to fill in for that.
Okay,
So who's going to familiarize Bev with
with
all
how
this
county is
stuff?
run.
I do have a question with regard to these hires.
Yes.
Are they all integrated into the budget that we're going to discuss, or are these add-ons to?
There's no add-ons this,
Right. I'm just asking if any of these are new hires that were not taken into consideration in the budget.
none are new
process.
hires, or I would have
Okay.
put them on the action item
That's
list.
all I wanted to know.
New hires go on the action list, so these are, okay, then I'm looking for a motion to approve the John, did you want to say anything about your public health and human services? You have a resignation?
I'm just here for questions as well.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion?
Being that they're already taken into consideration in the budget, I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Thank you. Moving on to action items. Number 1, consider the approval of providing Houston County, and it should say
be the Fair Board.
Fair Ag Society
Yep.
instead of Fair Historical.
Yep.
The additional allotment of $4,000, which was contingent upon the receipt of their financial statement. And I think they've been working with Carol on this, haven't they, Emily?
I did turn in our financials for our year ending in November, or end of September.
I sent that all out separately yesterday.
Yes, and we got that separate.
Yeah, I looked through that.
So
You had a good year.
We did have a good year.
Did
Weather
we?
always helps.
That's the
You
big,
didn't get
that's
rained
the
out
big
like-
decision thing
So
there.
if you could put that order in for the next 24 days, that would be awesome.
Yes,
Yeah, if we could only do that.
I know. Is there a motion?
I make a motion, we approve the 4,000 to the Egg Society.
I'll second it. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Number 2, consider approval of write-off of uncollectible delinquent accounts totaling $63,000. John?
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
So what I have before you this morning on this item is kind of a routine thing. Periodically, we take a look at our accounts receivable, and based on recommendation from the State Auditor's Office and criteria that I included in your packet, we come up with a list that we believe is uncollectible. Many of these folks are either deceased or we have no means of contacting them. And so as opposed to carrying that debt on an ongoing basis, we come to the board on a periodic basis and ask for you to approve essentially a bad debt list.
When was the last time we did this?
About 1.5 years ago.
You remember the amount then, or?
It was a little more than this. Hang on. Heidi, do you want to come up on that? I seem to recall it was 70-some thousand. Is that?
Yes,
Okay.
70.
that's correct.
And it was about 1.5 years ago, correct?
Yeah, every couple of years we revisit
Yeah.
our lists.
We discussed this at Finance Committee this morning, and it's frustrating. I mean, you'd like, obviously, for everybody to be accountable, but, you know, we, I guess, brought up the blood out of a turnip, the old saying. I mean, you can't get it where it is, doesn't exist, or you can't find them, or you can't chase them down, and
Are they passed away, or?
yeah, so
So there's kind of a list of things that we do to ensure that we've pursued every reasonable means to recover this on behalf of the county. And as I mentioned many times, you know, you have somebody who's deceased, you don't have that amount in an estate. Oftentimes it's somebody who we would spend more money trying to figure out where they are than they actually owe us.
Mm-hmm.
And so we make efforts to try and find people, reasonable efforts, and then on a regular basis or a routine basis, we come to the board with a list such as this.
There's probably several small ones, right, that adds up to this number, or?
I think there's 63 accounts.
Okay.
So there's, the vast majority of them are fairly small.
64.
64.
For 63,000.
Yeah. As I recall, looking at the list, there was a handful that were, you know, a couple, $3,000-4,000. The majority of them were in the hundreds.
And once you write them off, there's no more attempt to collect, or is there a back?
No, actually, that's a good question. It just takes them off of our books. A lot of these folks are still hooked into the revenue recapture program. So if they earn W-2 income or 1099 income in the state of Minnesota, we'll get some of that back based on how that rev recapture works.
Win the lottery.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Then we show up.
Yeah.
So it isn't,
Disappear.
oftentimes that's what'll happen though is they'll resurface because they've earned some money somewhere. And then existing avenues that we've put in place to recover that money kick in, and we still receive those. This is more of an accounting thing, and you know, it just takes it off of our books.
Yep.
So I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
All right.
Thank you, John and Heidi.
Thank you.
Consider approval of, this is the Root River Soil Water 2020 budget allocation, an additional allocation of 14,000, which we received the state matching funds. Jeff's going to address that.
So yeah, real quickly, the allocation itself is the same, but he's asked to reconsider. Last year, the board chose not to allocate the additional $14,400. He's asked the board to reconsider that for this year because it would be matched by other state money. So that would be in addition to the rest of their regular.
It would be an equal
allocation.
match. Yep.
Now, currently, that is not in the budget.
Correct.
And he's asked for this, but when did the request for this come? And was this back when we first started the budget process?
It probably started last December,
Yeah.
A year ago.
when it wasn't funded for last year. It's just been,
It was requested last year and didn't get approved.
But when we were looking at the budget, I don't remember seeing it as a requested item
No,
for this year's budget.
got
Because
from
it
him
was
last
off
week.
the list,
Yeah.
that's probably why.
But it wasn't reintroduced anyplace either.
It should have been. I know they could use this money for their water efforts, quality efforts. Plus, if they get a matching grant, I mean, it would be helpful.
Is there a project in the works that they need the money for? Or?
It's
I mean,
not,
what
it's
do we
not
know?
project specific, it's just, you know, it's too bad we should have had him here to talk about it.
He wasn't able to be here today. I'd invited.
Could we table this to, I suppose not.
I'm not sure what the deadline is to notify the state.
I think last year it was in January, cause I remember I was,
On the board at the time.
I think so.
Yeah, I'm
Yep.
looking through what he sent, see if I can find a deadline here. I'm not
If we
seeing
could
one.
table this to have him show up, it would be helpful.
Okay.
With the exception that, are we gonna establish the budget today?
Well, we are.
This would have to come out of general fund or another
Yep.
line item. Commissioner's budget or something like that. I don't think we would add to the levy because of it. I think we could do some appropriation there. Could we?
There's room to move it around, yep. I move that we table this.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We'll put them on the agenda for the
Yeah.
7th then,
Yeah.
if possible. I think it's the 7th, I didn't look. Okay, number 4, consider.
No, we've done.
Oh, yeah, that's the current funds. And 5, Approval of 2019 budget amendments. Carol, I think you did send those to us, didn't you?
Right, and there are usual end of the year budget amendments,
Mhm.
to more accurately reflect the budget compared to what the receipts or the disbursements were. Changes in staffing and health insurance and different things like that come into play. We discussed the fact that our delinquent taxes are down because of the refunds that we had to pay to Northern Natural Gas and Merck. So they're taken into consideration. We're required to reconcile variances from our budget to our actual when we're doing our audit, and from our 3-year comparison, and from our budget to budget. So we try to do these at the end. Well, we did them once in July, and now at the end of the year to just make that reconciliation easier and more accurately reflect what we've actually done throughout the year. We actually have, there's 2 sheets, and the general fund, the budget effect is actually eliminating the deficit that we had in our 2019 budget. And then there were a couple other sheets that are basically just moving things from one account to another, for the recorder's fund, the compliance fund. There was the HR facilities one to move money for the purchase of the replacement software at the system at the Justice Center. And so those are just moving from account to account. Highway also has their adjustments, which they typically do based on projects that they decided not to do, or projects in addition for additional money. And I believe their effect was like a $526 change in what their bottom line was for 2019.
But the net effect of what we're looking at in the green section of the sheets that we received, currently it's $156,374.
Oh, that's the levy sheet.
Right.
I'm talking about
Oh, you're talking, all right.
the budget amendments.
All right.
19.
19. We're cleaning up 19.
All right.
Need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed.
Now we can talk 2020 budget.
I'm really ahead of myself.
And so on the trifold that everyone's used to looking at, the far right column now is our final numbers. They reflect under the top budgeting for 2020 the changes that have been made to the budgets. As best we can, everything's been cleaned up as far as personnel costs and who's taking insurance this year and such, to reduce some of those numbers and things. And so that's what our final budget looks like now in that top right column. And then minus the CPA, the net levy effect comes in at 5.82. Of course, we've previously capped that at 5.
Mhm.
And so at the bottom of that column there, you see that the fund balance to keep us at the 5% levy is $156,000, which is now less than the $220,000 we were planning on when the 5% levy was set. So we've had
There's quite a bit of
budget
budget
some
reductions.
Yep.
When you compare the middle column to the end, everyone went.
The increase in fees was a big part of it.
Yep.
I think the personnel cost basically actually was a little more than what we had previously, just because of the enrollment. And then we did add the positions, so.
So originally, we had the 5%, we were looking at a fund balance usage of $222,000, and now we're looking at fund balance at 5% of $156.
Okay, and then
But if we drop it, you can see the amounts
Yeah.
of fund balance we would need.
And what was discussed at finances was not, what's not in here yet is the sale of the county land, which right now it looks like we will close in mid-January.
Okay.
And so that's $187,000 that will come into the account.
Mhm.
And that is not reflected on here yet.
The 187 coming into the accounts would leave us with a $30,626 surplus at the 5%.
At the 5%.
As an
But
example,
if we actually went to 3% and minus the 187,
we need $262,680.
out of fund balance, which is.
Less the 30,626. I'm using the 187.
Okay,
That leaves us with we're to the good 30,626. If we want to
Right.
go down to
If the
3%,
5%, yeah.
if we want to go down to a 3% increase, that's $262,340 less the 30,626.
232.54.
what, Carol?
$232,054.
Okay.
I just took the two numbers.
And again, we talked at finance, the 232 that you just mentioned would not be, devastating in any manner.
Given our fund balance, it wouldn't be, no.
Right. I think it would be, okay, I mean, you know, if you're looking at like 2019, we budgeted for deficit, and now we're ending up not having a deficit. So typically, the activity during the year ends up
And last year was
taking care of
2%
it.
levy.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Well, and this year, obviously, our union settlements and pay increase affected it.
A part of it was budgeted. I mean, we did budget for something in 2019. We didn't in 18. That's already been, when our financial statement was prepared as accrual, that money was already taken into consideration, and our fund balance was basically adjusted for that. So not as big a portion as what we think actually affected the 2019 numbers.
Well, given the season we're approaching, I'd be very happy to propose the 3%. Again, I would reference the fact that the Social Security increase is going to be 1.6, and so.
And Medicare is going up, and there's going to be more deductibles.
Yeah.
My mother informed me.
Well, I just got informed too that.
Oh, that's right, you would.
Yeah, Humana is eliminating whatever. I mean, we could go on and on.
Mhm.
The fact of the matter is, it's tight for people that don't have a ready source to increase their income, so.
Plus, I think about the people that had their evaluations like double.
Right.
You know, I think we should try to keep it as low as we possibly can. It's not gonna be a big help, but it's not gonna be, doubling up either, I don't think.
Yeah, I would agree.
It's 40% less increase.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
right now, we're actually looking to set the budget number, and that proposed one is, what, 29,996? Is that our budget on this back page here? Because
Right.
that is our total budget, and we have to have that in the minutes,
Where are you
what our
looking?
budget, it's on the back of the little
this one.
trifold here. So the budget, for setting the budget, 2020 budget, we're looking at $29,996.21. Well, whatever, I
Right.
said that wrong, but that's what this motion is for. Then the next motion will be to set the levy at whatever and use fund balance to make up the difference. Understand?
Yep.
what I'm looking for. Okay, so we need a motion right now to, am I? Okay,
the budget.
to set the budget.
And typically, you would actually set the tax levy first, so that you can actually
Well,
set the
I-
budget to know what your fund balance usage is gonna be, but
It won't make any difference.
either
so-
way,
Well,
But,
either way.
Yeah.
it would make a difference, I mean, because
well,
it
we're
won't
not
be,
changing the budget.
You're changing the amount of fund balance you're requiring to balance the
Right.
budget.
Okay, so
So
we'll
just
do,
We're not
flip 'em.
changing our expenditures, but we're changing the sources of.
so we should do the levy first.
okay, let's do
And
the levy.
then-
We'll do number 7 first and consider the levy. And Jack, did you have a motion to go? Was that a motion?
Yes, a motion to set the levy at 3%.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion?
I just think that it's be a lot better than 5%. That was a preliminary levy.
I think we all agree on that.
Yep.
I do have one question. Carol, with regard to this, by doing that and increasing the amount that comes out of the reserves at the different, do we allocate that proportionately? Some human services, some
Right.
highway, and, okay.
Mhm.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Levy is set. Now we'll go back to number 6 and give me a new figure, right?
It's going to be the same figure, but the amount of fund balance you're using to balance the budget changes on this back sheet
Okay.
to the 226. And I'll update this and send out a new copy, so you have that also.
Good.
Okay.
I would make a motion to approve the budget at 29,996,021.
I'll second Jack's motion.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed.
Now the 3 extra ones here that we need to add. So the first one would be a motion to adopt the federal procurement policy, comply with Title II U.S. Code, and there's a copy of said policy there for you. And this is a, I won't say generic, but a previously used procurement policy,
Right.
so we would be in compliance with the federal rules.
We had adopted the procurement policy December of 2016. There have been some waivers, so that you didn't necessarily have to worry about it when you were having your audit, but those waivers have ended, and we did have findings on our audit last year because we hadn't adopted this. They went through the policy and indicated exactly what needed to be put in so that we were in compliance, and we'll make sure that we have procedures in discussion with departments so that we have documentation.
Well, we better do it right.
You can read through the whole policy later if you like, but we do need a motion to.
With regard to that 813,449, does that go into the reserve, or do we send that back to the feds, or what happens to that? That's our wheelage tax?
Oh, no, we had previously committed that money to be used for the County 249 project, which meant when we were allocating our fund balance for our reporting, that had to stay not used for anything else. The project has now been completed, so we need to uncommit those funds,
So if you release it, right?
release it.
Yep.
Back into the reserve?
Right, back into just our general
Yep.
fund balance.
General fund or highway fund?
Well, highway fund
Highway fund,
balance.
okay.
Okay.
Highway
Which is
fund,
actually reserved because.
but we bracket it as to where it
Yeah,
came from and
yep.
what we.
It's in the road and bridge column in our financial statement.
So the first thing is the federal procurement policy, and we'll go to the
Make a
next
motion, we adopt the resolution for the federal procurement policy.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Then we adopt by motion designation of 2020 funds.
procedural motion just to continue to establish the funds that we've
We're
had
just supposed to
established.
do it each year.
Oh, are we?
Like, we haven't had the capital projects fund for a while, so you approved establishing that, and now we have to continue that we are going to use
So
that.
we just need a motion to.
Right, just what it says there.
To adopt these funds
Designate the funds.
as designated funds.
I'll make that a motion.
I'll second it.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed.
And then the final one is Resolution 1950, which then decommits the highway funds.
The 813,000.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to decommit the 813,449
That you
Second.
adopt the resolution.
Adopt the resolution.
Yeah.
and adopt the resolution.
And resolution, what is it, 19?
19-50.
I'll second the motion.
Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Boy, sure got a lot of finances today. I'll review them later though. Okay, Commissioner, Administrator updates.
All right. One of the things that was discussed heavily at the MACA portion of the AMC conference last week was the refugee resettlement executive order topic that you guys have heard much about. A couple of things that happened since then. First, one of the discussions was on who the appropriate authorities were for approving that. The way the executive order is written, it's essentially has been recognized as the county administrators, and it's the county level that they're looking for approval from. Some of the counties that have proceeded with that have asked the board for a resolution. Some counties, they've kind of been hit or miss on whether or not the administrator is going to do something or the board was going to do something. Looking across, just for perspective-wise, there's about 25 counties in the states that are actually getting direct refugees. Houston County is not on that list in the last 5 years that they provided data. So kind of a moot point for us really anyway. We're not on the list of places people are coming. But the governor has issued his order that Minnesota is welcome to all of the refugees. And the state is also joining a lawsuit against the executive order, fighting the necessity of it. So that's kind of what's going on there. And so there's no one's asked us for a letter from Houston County, so no action is needed at this point. The second topic, we do have the new county website is up and running. Some edits and changes as we go now that we're live and people are seeing it. But so far, just ask you to take a look at it, and if you see anything else, let us know what else needs to be on there. But it's up and running, and hats off to our IT department. As we've discussed in the past, there are counties that have spent $20,000, $40,000, $60,000 to have a website developed. We've done it in-house for under a couple thousand. So.
Excellent.
It's just
Excellent.
every time people change your websites, it just takes a little getting used.
Takes a little getting used to, but
because
it's-
you're used to the old one, and
Yep.
But this one seems fine.
Yeah.
I haven't
And
looked at it
we're
yet.
jumping from AOL technology up to WordPress and current technology. So, and a big part of that is fighting hard to keep it ADA compliant.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of effort to meet all the rules for that. So.
Yeah. Basically, it's statements, isn't it, or
It's
wording?
It is. There's all kinds of bits into it. There's the the contrasting between background and the lettering, so that the lettering can be seen, whether the website can be readable by somebody that uses a machine reader. The documents have to be text-based rather than image-based, so that they can be read. Pictures have to have descriptions. There's a whole litany of rules that go with that. So. And then finally, for District 5, we do have 4 applicants from that, so we will have to hold the 2 elections. as
Primary.
ones.
We have 4?
We have 4. Yep.
So the primary is when? Do you have the date?
It's February 11th, and then April
14th. I think I had April 14th.
14th, I think is the.
14th?
Yep.
I'm sorry.
February 11th is the
11th.
primary.
Okay.
Can we stay to there? No,
I don't see why not. It's,
it's public record, isn't it?
yeah, so Char Miners. Yeah, well, there you go.
It's already
Check
there.
the news. Yeah, Char Miners, Greg Myrie, and Dan Piper, is it?
Peeper, whatever.
Peeper,
Yep.
and
Is it Dan?
Onstead.
David, isn't it?
David Peeper.
David,
sorry.
David
Dave
Peeper.
Peeper,
And Onstead.
and
Scott Onstead.
Onstead.
Scott,
Onstead. It's from Spring Grove.
Yep.
okay.
Okay. Commissioner reports.
You want me to start?
Yes, please. Sorry about that. I was
Nope.
looking at my 2-page report here.
The only report I have is Jack and I were at the Finance Committee meeting this morning discussing departmental budget and the final budget for the year, and we've acted on that, so there's not a great deal to say about that. The only other question I had, and I asked Jack this, but with regard to the county shop progress, and, you know, if we are also gonna look at a solar array on that building in order to defer the cost of the electrical. If Barrientos is gonna give us information on that, or if we have to seek that ourselves, and what the cost is and the payback versus what our electrical is gonna be estimated to be.
It's, and I
That'd be
shared
separate.
with Bob that it's on the radar.
Yeah. But Barentos isn't doing it. No.
We'll go out on bids on our own for that
Yeah.
type of deal. Okay.
Is there somebody that can give us an estimation of cost as far as the payback? I mean,
I would assume
okay.
there's,
It all depends on if we can get the credits or not, being a county.
I'm sure we don't get the credits, but since we don't have taxes. That's the only thing I was gonna comment on.
Okay. Eric. Commissioner Johnson.
Eric's fine.
Okay.
AMC meeting was, convention was a good convention, a lot of information. It was good to hear that the governor promised that the counties wouldn't be getting a bill for that accounting error on Health and Human Services billing. We'll see how that turns out. Someone's gonna have to pay that mistake, so.
well, that was a point, not doing it, but that made this morning and made earlier that it's not coming out of his personal checkbook, so
Yeah.
somebody else is gonna suffer at the state level or the county level because the money's gotta come out of
Yep.
our taxes somewhere, but anyway, it's good for our budget purposes that we're not gonna have to adjust and get the hit,
The
yeah.
levy, yes.
Yesterday I had a Bluff Country HRA meeting. It was a teleconference, and along with Fillmore County, and Doug Grout from SEMCAC was there. And they're toying with this idea of a pilot project in Rushford. I know this has nothing to do with us, but this is what they're starting in Rushford on, doing a loan project for homeowners to do improvements on their homes. It wouldn't be a monthly payment type of a loan. It'd be a equity loan. So if they were to sell the house, it would be paid then. And they're looking at like $300,000 startup project, and to see how that goes. And what they're doing is to see how it works out for Rushford. if the counties would be interested, because there'd be matching funds, so we could be talking some significant amount of money that we'd have to match to do something like that county-wide. So I just wanted to give you guys a heads up on that. I said I would pass the information along. I didn't make any promises on this, so I just wanted to let you guys know about it. And I'll keep you up to date on how that's progressing.
So it wouldn't come out of your checkbook then?
No, it wouldn't come out of mine, because that's pretty much depleted, so. I guess that's all I have.
Okay, I had a meeting yesterday in Rochester for the Southeast Minnesota Emergency Communications Board, and I guess the most significant thing for Houston County that came out of there was that we are getting $17,000 toward GIS upgrade, and Jeff indicated we've been aware of that, and we just need to know when the payout may come, and so we're on top of that. AMC, I agree with Eric. A good conference, some good information. I'm on the Human Services Committee, and of course the much publicized state flubbing was discussed, and again the governor's promise will hopefully be followed up on. I'll just mention a couple of things that AMC supports, increasing tobacco purchase from 18 to 21, and again, unless I misread it, I think the feds are going to be doing this anyhow. AMC supports the use of recovered tobacco settlement dollars for public health prevention activities. Again, they were talking about they haven't been getting the money they expect, but then on the reverse, they haven't been spending it the way they said they'd spend it. So hopefully this will spend the money the way you're supposed to spend it, state. And AMC supports legislation that streamlines Minnesota's food safety system to eliminate licensing authority complexity of food operations and remove barriers for starting food businesses. This goes to the fact that the health department does one inspection, the ag department does another. They get all confused as, oh, this is a deli, but this is over there is the meat market, and then, no, they're doing it. And they're falling over one another, not
Working together.
It's not smooth, but other than that, that's all I have.
I have quite a
Oh,
lengthy...
I have one other thing.
Okay.
The Walters found out that you need to have a decent battery if you have a meeting in St. Cloud.
And it's 15 below zero.
17 below zero.
Was that? And we walked over that morning, and of course I fell on the ice. I will say the same thing, that the AMC conference, every session that I went to was excellent, and I did make some notes on some of the sessions I'm going to bring up today. But I'm going to start with solid waste meeting. Julie and I went to solid waste last Wednesday. She does an excellent job for our county, and they really pick up on a lot of the information she presents, and great person to have. You know, she followed Rick to a T. So, also, after the meeting, she and I had to pick up 40 boxes of recycler and bring them back to the county. So I got some extra one for each of you here. They are going to have stickers, because yesterday Aaron got a notice, and Julie, that the MPCA wants a little sticker in there, the contact number or something, requiring it. So they're going to make stickers and put them in the 40 boxes of recycler. I thought, that's typical. They also brought up that the state of Wisconsin is really tackling them about, it's called PFSA, it's polyfluoride substances that are coming from carpeting, and they're going after landfills, even though landfills just receive it. They're not putting it out. So they have a big campaign going that you need to tackle the factories and the businesses that are actually producing the stuff to eliminate it from the product. So rather than the landfills we can't stop it, really, unless you say you aren't going to take garbage anymore. But So that was very interesting. Then I had an extension meeting Thursday, and I think I had 5 meetings last week. Crazy, but we were supposed to have a joint meeting with Fillmore County on Monday, and it got canceled because of lack of quorum. We need to approve 2 people, and that'll be done in January when we do our committee assignments. We have 1 so far, Brad Hochscheit. The other person declined getting back on the board, Matt Feldmeyer. So if you know of anybody that might be interested in being on the extension board, give it to Jeff so he has it for our meeting when we do our assignments. I went to the state extension meeting, and of course the focus is on the 4-H awards, which will be given out at the legislative conference. And they're working, the extension office is working, updating their strategic plan and reaching out to farmers and ag people more across the whole state. Then at AMC, it was excellent. I had the Public Safety Committee, similar to Jack's Human Services. In fact, we worked together on some of the amendments there. But we had the Commissioner for Public Safety, this John Harrington. He was just excellent. He really has taken over that commission and has done a lot of real positive things. He brought up that the Real ID, just to remind everybody, takes place in September of 2020. They have run into a lot of problems with driver tests, and mainly in the metro area, that there's so many people wanting to get a driver's test and they can't get on the agenda for, or the appointments for months. So now they're working Saturdays and Sundays to accommodate.
Is this for all driving
For
tests or
new
CDLs?
drivers,
or-
new drivers,
Yeah.
basically. And their people would have to take off from work to take their kid there, and then they never would get tested because they were so busy. So they're redoing that whole system up there. And he is really reducing domestic assault cases, and he's leading a lot of the homeless issues too. The average levy across the state between the 87 counties was 4.7%. I think everybody got that information. I went to one on class and comp maintenance with, Eric went to that one too, I believe. And they really pushed doing job descriptions annually.
Wage to study.
Wage studies annually. And this was put on by, what, DDA? But we, I think, at this time used Gallagher, but they're willing to bid on it if we are interested in doing it. I went to the public hearing, and they put that presentation on their website, AMC website also. It was at Jennifer Wolf, who's just excellent from MCIT, great speaker. But a couple of the things that really struck me a little bit is how we have to focus, all of our boards really have to focus on facts versus any bias before you go to a meeting, because that's where the lawsuits are coming from. You know, they know that I'm not going to approve that no matter what they tell me, you know, or statements. You've got to really watch what you say. They brought up that when 3 commissioners would attend, like, for instance, the Board of Adjustment or Planning Commission, that's violation of the open meeting law. You can go to a social function and 3 of you be there, but when it's actually a county meeting, even if you don't sit by each other, they get
quorum.
lawsuits. It's a quorum. So we need to really be aware of that, even though I think we are, but just.
Are you talking like when we meet with Fillmore County and Mabel?
Nope,
No,
I'm
'cause
talking
that's-
when we, no.
That's scheduled, so that's,
Scheduled, but is
it's
it
a public
advertised?
meeting. I believe so.
We advertise that?
That's advertised.
Okay.
When we have public comment at board meetings, they said staff can ask questions, but not the public. And we should not, well, you know, if somebody raises their hand that they want to talk.
During the meeting,
During the meeting.
not at.
But at the public comment period, we're not supposed to engage with the people doing the public comment. That's just their recommendations from MCIT. I went to the health policy, and it was good, but it's the same thing we all know. Nobody knows what's going to happen. basically, is what it boiled down to. The banquet and music were really good, and this is my last meeting as chair, and I really worked hard at staying focused, calm, and getting some business done this past year.
You did a good job.
You did a great job.
And I want to make one wonderful comment at the end. I won the grand prize at AMC.
Oh, you lucky dog.
They called Houston County, and I'm going, no, I can't be.
That was on Wednesday?
Yeah.
Good thing you stayed then.
I was. I was shocked, but I got an iPad.
Cool.
Yeah. Haven't got it
You're not
running
gonna
yet.
let Dick use it now, are you? That's gonna be yours, right?
I would
Yeah.
restrict the use.
Yes, exactly. And that's basically a summary of what I have. Okay, is there any closing public comment?
Just one thing before we start that. Is there this emergency management grant thing, is that supposed to be,
Is that supposed to be on our agenda?
was that supposed to be on our agenda? I see it is in the packet, but,
It was in the consent agenda.
was it?
Yep.
We did that?
Number 3?
Did you want to add on to that, or?
All I wanted to say was, well, I was here to answer questions. If you guys had any questions about the allotment of funds, I think we did drop by $200 this year. And the state has been very behind this year, because usually I do this in September. And there was a massive turnover in the state's emergency management grant department. So they've been scrambling, and I actually had to email them yesterday and remind them, okay, I need the signature page so I can actually get it by the end of the year. That's all I need is actually a signature page. Last year, Teresa and Jeff signed it, and I figured that would be the same thing this year. They're still authorized to sign, so that's all I need. But if you had any questions about it, I could try and answer best I can. I mean,
I had some inquiries about,
yes.
how fast do you think the state will reimburse the townships on some of this stuff?
Oh, you're talking about the disaster funds.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. It depends on which one. The state is very held up right now with the FEMA disaster from the spring, which yes does include Houston Township's lovely 75,000 plus. I've been thinking about that. From what I've been talking to the townships about, most of them have actually gone through the process now with FEMA, with mixed, varying results of positive and negative. Some people at the FEMA area have been really good to work with. I heard really good things from Caledonia Township. And then I've heard some kind of more confusing negative comments from like Mayville Township next to them. So, but it sounds like everybody on our end for the most part has now submitted their damages with their documents. So now it's up to FEMA to approve on their end, and once they approve, then they send it to the state, because the state reimburses that other 25%. FEMA only reimburses 75%. So that's that FEMA process. Once that is done, any townships that are in the summer disaster, including the county, I believe with County 21,
Yep.
I believe they're going on simultaneously. I'm not sure as to how fast that's going, because I think there's 5 state disasters as well as the federal one, and so they're very taxed at the state. But I don't know if the county has received theirs yet. I'd have to ask Brian over in Highway if County 21 has been reimbursed yet.
Right.
But I know they have a closing that they try to have everything done within 12 to 18 months of the initial situation. So hopefully the FEMA one will be closed within the next 6 months, or at least everything will be paid out.
FEMA's usually quite a bit faster, and the state's always a little behind, but.
It goes a little bit both ways depending. This year has been a very big year for disasters, and they've kind of been all over the state. I'm a member of a Facebook group called Emergency Management Issues, and just last week somebody in Missouri was asking, well, why isn't FEMA here? We've had a disaster in May. And I'm sitting here like, well, we have one in March and April, and we still have them. So that would be why they're taking longer elsewhere. So they're stretched really thin right now. Our representatives that are staying in Rochester, they're from Louisiana, New Hampshire, all over the place. So they're really drawing on their resources best they can. But I'm hopeful that this will wrap up pretty quickly, and hopefully we don't have any more tagged on next spring.
On a different subject, would you care to comment at all on the La Crescent training?
Yes. So, we'd send out a request to all of you if you were interested in attending. The training, it's called Hostile Event Response Training, or HURT for short. It's similar to if you have ever heard of ECHO training for law enforcement. Basically, it trains law enforcement to work with first responders on responding to man-made threats in an area, how to kind of test their stress levels and how they should interact with the public and potential victims in that case. Now, this training specifically was geared as an active shooter event, but there were some simulations for like bomb threats and other things like that too, just so everybody could practice. And from what I heard with the trainers, I was kind of listening into their hot wash, their after training meeting, and they said this is probably the best group they've ever had. And that's over, I'd say, 3 or 4 years. I think they've done at least 6 trainings a year throughout the Southeast region. And they were very impressed with our region's, or our training's participants' ability to ask questions and to kind of push the boundaries and make sure that they're understanding what's going on. And it sounds like the evaluations that came back went well, too. I know the sheriff attended for an hour or so, and he got to watch some of that. I myself got to play a bunch of distressed callers, and because we had a little dispatch simulation as well. So it was a very fast-moving afternoon. The morning was classes and a little slower, but the afternoon, everybody seemed to get a lot out of it. And I know that there are other places in the region that are looking at doing it next year. I know Mower County, and maybe one up in Wabasha County. So if you're ever interested in attending one and just observing it, you can let me know and I can see if I can get you a date. Because they're very informational, they're very eye-opening, and I think the first responders and the law enforcement officers and the dispatchers get a lot out of it. I myself attended it in 2017 in Faribault, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to bring it here, is we saw how wonderful it was and how prepared it helps make the law enforcement and first responders, because we don't want to think about something bad happening here, but if we're prepared for it, it's better than just pushing it to the side and pretending it'll never happen, because it does happen. The Saturday that we did it was a couple days after the Sparta and Green Bay, all of those situations out in Wisconsin. So it was really on the forefront of everybody's mind as we came there. So, yeah.
Thank you. Good.
Thank you.
Good to hear.
Yeah. So I can just leave this with you guys, and Jeff, I can get it from you tomorrow if that works.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks. So it's just number 2 here.
And then next,
Can you stick around for just a minute afterward?
I can stick around, yeah.
I have a question for you.
Okay, yeah.
where did you get it
Yeah.
Our meeting in January, as you probably saw on the schedule, is the 7th, and that's by state. We have to be done the first Tuesday of January. So it's not a workshop, it's a meeting.
Regular meeting.
We have to be what?
We have to meet January
Oh,
7th,
it's required
first
that
Tuesday
way,
by
yeah.
state.
Okay.
And then we'll have 2 workshops and then a meeting back to the 4th.
And based on the discussion with Chris, I'll put a notice out on the 14th. We will have a portion of regular meetings. You can address the bonding issue. Otherwise, it'll be a workshop day.
Okay.
So we'll notice that meeting so you can have a discussion and make a decision on that.
Okay.
I'm gonna be gone.
Oh, yeah?
So,
Okay.
So that's a regular meeting, January 7th?
A portion of it will be to
January
decide on the bond.
January 7th will be a regular meeting, and the regular annual meeting. The 14th we'll have a short meeting for the bond discussion and then a workshop from there.
Okay.
Anything else to
No.
be brought up?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
We- I
Was there
gotta
any
ask-
public comment?
Oh,
or-
does anybody wish to address the board?
I think you did that.
Did I?
We didn't do that. We almost did.
Now
So,
we can
yeah,
adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion
All right,
passed.
quickly.